This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings and you have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 2 minutes to check your answer. Now turn to part 1.
Part 1. You will hear a man interviewing a woman about some job vacancies at a hotel in her city. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming in today. I understand you're interested in a position at the Coconut Grove?
Yes, that's correct. I've always admired their reputation and I'm keen to be a part of it.
Well, there's no doubt they have an excellent reputation as an affordable but luxurious hotel to stay at when traveling to the Sunshine Coast. They also deliver monthly training sessions to all staff members to make sure you can develop your career.
That sounds very appealing. I value companies that invest in their employees' development.
In terms of the salary, it's paid on an hourly basis. Is that fine for you?
Yes, I'm used to that type of pay arrangement.
Right. Along with those benefits, you can also take advantage of the free shuttle bus service that they offer to and from the workplace. It runs several times per day.
Oh, that's perfect for me. I'm not a fan of driving to work.
Another thing you should know is that punctuality and strong organizational skills are highly valued here.
Well, in my previous role, I was responsible for creating staff schedules and ensuring everything ran smoothly.
That's great to hear. They also require a university degree in a related field.
I have a degree in hospitality, and I've always been interested in the industry.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 6 to 10.
Let's delve into the 2 positions currently available at the Coconut Grove. The first one is for a hotel manager, and it's located on the Esplanade.
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Esplanade. Esplanade. It's by the beach near Glenelg.
Right, I know where you're talking about now. Can you tell me more about the responsibilities of this role?
No problem. This type of role requires overseeing daily operations by making sure all the staff are working efficiently and providing excellent customer service.
That would be quite a big step up from my previous role. Though, in my last job, I was responsible for training the new junior staff in the kitchen, welcoming them to the hotel, and guiding them in their roles.
It definitely helps that you have some basic experience in that area. Actually, I should mention that the hotel is willing to take on younger staff anyway.
Can you tell me about the salary? In my previous role, I was earning about £11 per hour.
Sure, the salary for this role would be a fair bit higher then. The hourly rate is £30.
That sounds terrific.
Regarding the time commitment, it's quite heavy. You would start at around 8 a.m. and work until about 8 p.m. What's nice is that you have a break in the afternoon and you also get 2 days off per week.
That doesn't sound too bad then.
Moving on to the second position, which is for a kitchen supervisor. It's located in the downtown branch and the role involves supervising kitchen staff and managing the inventory.
That feels similar to my previous role. I might prefer this position actually.
Perfect. Well, you would be in charge of things like ordering all the groceries for the kitchen and managing the weekly shopping budget.
I used to shadow the kitchen supervisor in my last job, so I learned some tips on how to manage the kitchen's finances.
That's impressive. So the salary for the kitchen supervisor role is a bit lower than the other role, and you would earn £16 per hour.
It's nice to hear that it's still a step up from my previous role.
The hours are more structured and tend to be in the morning from 7:30 to 10:30 a.m. and again in the evenings from 6 o'clock to 10 p.m. The schedule is pretty flexible.
That does seem appealing.
It sounds like the kitchen supervisor role would be a great fit for you. Would you like to proceed with an application for this position?
While both roles are interesting, I think the kitchen supervisor role aligns better with my current aims.
Excellent. I'll move forward with your application then.
Thank you very much.
That's the end of Part 1. You'll now have half a minute to check your answers to Part 1. Now turn to Part 2.
You will hear a woman giving a talk about a planned housing development to address the need for more living space in a town. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Hello everyone, thank you all for joining us today. It's wonderful to see so many members of our community here to discuss the exciting new Green Meadow housing development. My name is Jessica Thompson, and I am the Senior Project Manager for the development. I'm excited to present our plans for Green Meadow. To begin, I'd like to explain why we've opted for this particular site for our new housing development. Currently, the land is mostly vacant, with some small-scale agricultural activities ongoing. Brookfield has recently seen a boom with the arrival of several major tech companies, creating a sharp increase in demand for residential housing. The current housing inventory hasn't been able to keep up with this surge, so it quickly became a priority to develop new homes for employees relocating to the area. Of course, there's also the fact that we are close to a train station that connects us to the capital city, but even though that's definitely appealing, it wasn't one of the main factors for choosing the site. We were more keen on the idea that the site is surrounded by green space and close to a river, providing fresh air, just 5 kilometers from the bustling town of Brookfield. One drawback to the proposed complex is that it sits next to the riverbank, and during extreme weather conditions, the site could be prone to flooding, but we have elevated the development to manage this problem. Now, let me share some of the positive feedback we've received about Green Meadow. Many people are excited about the wide range of convenience this development will offer, with easy access to numerous facilities right within the community. Residents also appreciate the variety of planned outdoor spaces, such as the promenade by the river and the numerous plants and trees throughout the development. We think that this will help to promote a more active and healthy lifestyle among future residents. While the feedback has generally been very positive, there have been concerns regarding the distance to Brookfield. Nevertheless, we're considering setting up a complimentary bus service to the town to make commuting easier.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer the questions 15 to 20.
Right. So I'll just bring up a map of the proposed development on the projector. At the southern end, you'll see the main road, which connects with Brookfield, and there is another entrance on the western side of the development along Winston Road. The development will be home to 6 building blocks, and each of them will hold about 30 units. One of the facilities that parents are most excited about is the Kids Club. If you come in at the southern entrance and look toward the northern side, there's a square in the middle of the development. The Kids Club will be beyond the square on the left-hand side, and it's located on the far end of that property. We're excited to share that the property has access to a variety of sporting facilities. So just behind the Kids Club and residential apartment is where you'll see the swimming pool. A set of tennis courts is also planned for the development. To find them, just continue in the southern direction, along the pedestrian walkway, toward the main road. First, you'll see a park. Go past this recreational space, and the tennis courts are at the end of the walkway. There will also be a few spots where you can grab essentials, and you can find those in the grocery store. Can you see the pair of shops on both sides of the square? The grocery store will be the one on the right-hand side of the square. Of course, since the property is not directly in a town, we have a restaurant and a cafe, and there will be plenty of discounts for residents. Do you see the riverbank on the eastern side of the property? The cafe itself is opposite the riverbank, which is just a 2-minute walk away. In fact, there is also a lovely boardwalk which is in the works, and we hope it will provide plenty of opportunities for exercise. Anyway, there's also the library, which is back on the northern side of the property. It's located away from the roads to provide a quieter space for reading and studying. Remember the Kids Club? We're planning to have the library adjacent to it, in between the 2 residential buildings.
That's the end of part 2. You'll now have half a minute to check your answers to part 2. Now turn to part 3.
You will hear Teresa and Simon discussing their university project about the causes and immediate effects of the Dust Bowl. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
So shall we begin putting together our presentation then? We've got to have everything ready by the end of this week.
Good idea. Luckily, we've done all the reading then. Actually, I had never even heard about the Dust Bowl before.
I know, me too. It was such a catastrophic drought, and it had a massive impact on the people living in the central part of the United States at the time.
Exactly. I read somewhere that a large portion of the arable land in the Great Plains was rendered useless, not to mention all of those people who were left homeless and had to migrate. I am surprised we never learned about this in school.
It's possible that the history books just focused on the major events that were happening around this time. After all, the middle of the 20th century was a turbulent period, given the dominance of the First World War.
Yeah. There was the Great Depression too. Okay, I see what you're saying. What did you read about the economic effect?
Well, what I read was that the direct losses are estimated to have amounted to hundreds of millions of dollars.
It must have been more than that, though, when you consider all the people that lost their jobs and livelihoods. In reality, it looked like the entire economic cost was hard to quantify precisely.
That's right. I also came across that somewhere. Plus, there was the emergency relief fund that they had to set up as an immediate response, which also cost a significant amount.
Interesting. And they put into place an early warning system to prevent future events from recurring. Anyway, I think we should focus on the causes and how states were affected.
Good idea.
You know, the number of people that migrated was staggering. They say that a total of 2.5 million people had to flee states in the Great Plains to move to California.
Yeah, but I think you're talking about the total number of people that left those states to move to other ones. It was only about 250,000 people who made the difficult journey to the western state.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer the questions 25 to 30.
We should talk about some of the major causes next.
Some people in the past believed that the event was mainly caused by climatic conditions. The temperature change was so remarkable for the time because it vastly exceeded previous years on record. Also, it appears the temperature increase was closely connected with a severe shortage of rain.
I imagine this would have been obvious to people at the time. It looks like the drought then turned into the dust storm, didn't it?
These events were certainly related. However, what we now know today is that there were more significant causes of this disaster. One of the factors that was so pivotal in causing the dust storm was the enormous pressure being placed on land by human activity.
I think I read something about overcultivation somewhere.
Yes. Basically, there was a heavy reliance on only producing wheat, and farmers in the area neglected to rotate their crops. This behavior, along with the added pressure of historic weather conditions, is what led to the eventual soil erosion.
Well, people had to find some way to continue growing their crops, otherwise they would have suffered from starvation anyway.
In any case, I think that mentioning how people don't really realize how much of a role humans played would definitely be a useful angle for us to take.
Sure.
We should now run through some of the terrible effects that occurred in each of the states in the Great Plains. Let's see. Oklahoma appears to have been most known for being the state with the highest exodus. Locals had to flee to pursue job opportunities in California because their economy had such limited prospects.
That must have been so demoralizing. In Texas, it looks like there was a great frequency of dust clouds, polluting the air with dust which people then inhaled. As a result, many people developed respiratory issues like pneumonia, asthma, and bronchitis.
I think people would be shocked if they heard how people were impacted over in Kansas. The Dust Bowl destroyed much of the grazing lands, meaning there was a lack of nutrients in the soil for animals. It was so devastating that mortality rates skyrocketed, and most farmers were forced to sell off their livestock.
Finally, it looks like Nebraska experienced widespread bank failures due to economic hardships caused by the Dust Bowl. The collapse in agriculture unfortunately led to massive financial losses for farmers who defaulted on loans, causing local banks to fail.
That's the end of part 3. You'll now have half a minute to check your answers to part 3. Now turn to part 4.
You will hear a That is the fashion end of student part giving 3. a presentation on a movement known as power dressing that transformed women's participation in the workplace. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning. Now, we've been asked to talk about a development in fashion that has transformed a theme beyond the sector, leading to significant benefits for greater society. I selected the theme of power dressing in the 1980s, as it captures a pivotal moment in fashion that stretched far beyond appearance. It was about female empowerment. During this period, the concept of the glass ceiling became widely discussed. This term illustrated the unseen, yet unbreachable barrier that prevented women from rising to top positions in their fields, regardless of their qualifications or achievements. Women in the workplace faced immense challenges, battling gender stereotypes, wage gaps, and limited opportunities for advancement. Power dressing emerged not just as a trend, but as a strategic tool to combat these obstacles and assert female presence in the corporate world. The concept of power dressing revolved around clothing designed to project values, such as authority and confidence, that were critical in conveying one's capabilities in a male-dominated professional environment. It was about adopting a style that allowed women to command the same respect and attention as their male counterparts. The popular movement was heavily influenced by the growing participation of women in the workforce, who needed attire that was both professional and conducive to their demanding roles. In previous decades, particularly before the 1980s, women's professional attire was often more feminine and less formal. For example, in the 1950s and 1960s, women in the workplace often wore dresses with full skirts, cinched waists, and softer, paler colors. The overall look emphasized traditional feminine qualities rather than professional strength. However, this trend in fashion then took a sharp turn. By the 1980s, clothing choices included shoulder pads, tailored suits, and bold colors, and each were chosen for their impact. Shoulder pads were perhaps the most iconic feature, adding structure to the silhouette and mimicking the broad shoulder lines traditionally associated with male authority figures, as a result conveying strength and leadership. Also, tailored suits, often paired with midi skirts or trousers, provided a polished and conservative look, diverging drastically from the more feminine and less formal attire of previous decades. These suits were designed to fit closely to the body, which not only highlighted a woman's shape, but also signified professionalism. Another feature was the use of bold colors, such as power reds, navies, and blacks, which were chosen for their psychological impact, as darker shades are often associated with seriousness and determination. The adoption of these elements was a highly effective way for women to project authority, as it visually aligned them with traditional symbols of power and decisiveness that were traditionally limited to men. What's more, dressing conservatively helped women demonstrate that they were serious and capable professionals who understood and followed along with the universal standards of professionalism in the workplace. Thus, women were able to employ their attire as a way to break away from the stereotypes that associated women with being overly emotional or not suited for high-stress roles in the corporate world. The effects of power dressing have continued into the 21st century, playing a significant role in transforming workplace culture and the perception of women in professional settings. While today's trends have evolved, the foundational impact of power dressing is undeniable. It paved the way for modern corporate attire, where women no longer need to sacrifice femininity for professionalism. The legacy of power dressing has helped to normalize the presence of women in leadership roles. The movement has also challenged perceptions of professionalism and the widely held belief that authority and competence are not tied to a specific look. Although women now have a broader spectrum of acceptable professional attire, one thing is clear: the fashion choices of the 1980s were instrumental in breaking the stereotypes of women in the workplace.
That's the end of Part 4. You'll now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4. That is the end of the listening test. You now have some time to check your answers to parts 1 to 4.